Before I call the Chancellor to make his statement, I'd like to point out that British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live TV. So I now call the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, the central responsibility of any government is to do what is necessary for economic stability. Behind the decisions we take and the issues on which we vote are jobs families depend on, mortgages that have to be paid, savings for pensioners, and businesses investing for the future. We are a country that funds our promises and pays our debts. And when that is questioned, as it has been, this government will take the difficult decisions necessary to ensure there is trust and confidence in our national finances. That means decisions of eye-watering difficulty. But I give the House and the public this assurance: every single one of those decisions, whether reductions in spending or increases in tax, will be shaped through core, compassionate, conservative values that will prioritise the needs of the most vulnerable. That is why I pay tribute to my predecessors for the energy price guarantee, for the furlough scheme, and indeed for earlier decisions to protect the NHS budget in a period when other budgets were being cut. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to be completely frank about the scale of the economic challenge we face. We have had short-term difficulties caused by the lack of an OBR forecast alongside the mini-budget. But there are also inflationary and interest pressures around the world. Russia's unforgivable invasion of Ukraine has caused energy and food prices to spike. We cannot control what is happening in the rest of the world, but when the interest of economic stability means the government needs to change course, we will do so. And that is what I have come to the House to announce today. In my first few days in the job, I've held extensive discussions with the Prime Minister, Cabinet colleagues, the Governor of the Bank of England, the OBR, the Head of the Debt Management Office, Treasury officials, and many others. The conclusion I've drawn from those conversations is that we need to do more quickly to give certainty to the markets about our fiscal plans and show through action and not just words that the United Kingdom can and always will pay our way in the world. We've therefore decided to make further changes to the mini-budget immediately, rather than waiting until the medium-term fiscal plan in 2 weeks' time, in order to reduce unhelpful speculation about those plans. Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful for your agreement on the need to give the markets an early brief summary this morning, but I welcome the opportunity to give this House details of those decisions now. We've decided on the following changes to support confidence and stability. Firstly, the Prime Minister and I agreed yesterday to reverse almost all the tax measures announced in the growth plan 3 weeks ago that have not been legislated for in Parliament. So we will continue with the abolition of the health and social care levy, changes to stamp duty, the increase in the annual investment allowance to £1 million and the wider reforms to investment taxes. But we will no longer be proceeding with the cuts to dividend tax rates, saving around £1 billion a year, the reversal of the off-payroll working reforms introduced in 2017 and 2021, saving around £2 billion a year, the new VAT-free shopping scheme for non-UK visitors, saving a further £2 billion a year, or the freeze on alcohol duty rates, saving around £600 million a year. I will provide further details on how those rates will be uprated.
Just let us sort this telephone out. I've just switched it off, all right? It's off. OK. Sorry, Chancellor. Carry on. It was this.
I will provide further details on how alcohol duty rates will be uprated shortly. Second, the government is currently committed to cutting the basic rate of income tax to 19% in April of 2023. It is a deeply held conservative value, a value that I share, that people should keep more of the money they earn, which is why we have continued with the abolition of the health and social care levy. But at a time when markets are asking serious questions about our commitment to sound public finances, we cannot afford a permanent discretionary increase in borrowing worth £6 billion a year. So I've decided that the basic rate of income tax will remain at 20%, and it will do so indefinitely until economic circumstances allow for it to be cut. Taken together with the decision not to cut corporation tax and restoring the top rate of income tax, the measures I've announced today will raise around £32 billion every year. The third step I'm taking today, Mr. Speaker, is to review the energy price guarantee. That was the biggest single expense in the growth plan and one of the most generous schemes in the world. It's a landmark policy for which I pay tribute to my predecessor, my right honourable friend from Spelthorne, and will support millions of people through a difficult winter, reducing inflation by up to 5%. So I confirm today that the support we are providing between now and April next year will not change. But beyond next April, the Prime Minister and I have reluctantly agreed it would not be responsible to continue exposing the public finances to unlimited volatility in international gas prices. So I'm announcing today a Treasury-led review into how we support energy bills beyond April next year. The review's objective is to design a new approach that will cost the taxpayer significantly less than planned, whilst ensuring enough support for those in need. Any support for businesses will be targeted to those most affected, and a new approach will better incentivise energy efficiency. There remain, I'm afraid, many difficult decisions to be announced in the medium-term fiscal plan on October the 31st. When I confirm that we will publish a credible, transparent, fully costed plan to get debt falling as a share of the economy over the medium term, based on the judgment and economic forecasts of the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. I'd like to thank the OBR, whose Director Richard Hughes I met this morning, and the Bank of England, whose Governor Andrew Bailey I've now met twice. I fully support the vital independent roles both institutions play, which give markets, the public and the world confidence that our economic plans are credible and rightly hold us to account for delivering them. But I also want more independent expert advice as I start my journey as Chancellor. So I'm announcing today the formation of a new Economic Advisory Council to do just that. This council will advise the government on economic policy, with 4 names announced today: Rupert Harrison, former Chief of Staff to the Chancellor of the Exchequer; Gert-Jan Vlieger from Element Capital; Sushil Wadhwani of Wadhwani Asset Management; and Karen Ward of JP Morgan. Mr. Speaker, we remain completely committed to our mission to go for growth, but growth requires confidence and stability, which is why we are taking many difficult decisions starting today. But whilst we do need realism about the challenges ahead, we must never fall into the trap of pessimism. Despite all the adversity and challenge we face, there is enormous potential in this country, with some of the most talented people, 3 of the world's top 10 universities, the most tech unicorns in Europe, one of the world's great financial centres, incredible strengths in the creative industries, in science, research, engineering, manufacturing and innovation. And all that gives me genuine optimism about our long-term prospects for growth. But to achieve that, it is vital we act now to create the stability on which future generations can build. The reason the United Kingdom has always succeeded is because at big and difficult moments we have taken tough decisions in the long-term interests of the country, and in a way that is consistent with compassionate conservative values. That is what we will do now, and I commend this statement to the House.
I now call the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I regularly say now, I welcome the new Chancellor to his place. The 4th in 4 months of chaos and fiasco as this Conservative government spirals down the political plug hole. But the damage has been done. This is a Tory crisis, made in Downing Street, but ordinary working people are paying the price. All that is left after these humiliating U-turns are higher mortgages for working people and higher bonuses for bankers. And their climb down on energy support begs the question yet again, why won't they extend the windfall tax on energy producers to help foot the bill? Now, it is good to finally see the Prime Minister in her place, and not, as the Leader of the House had to assure us earlier, under a desk. But, Mr. Speaker, what is she left with? No authority, no credibility, no plan for growth, and it is clear to see the people who caused the chaos cannot be the people to fix the chaos. They are out of ideas, out of touch, and out of time. Now, the Prime Minister should have spoke to the House today, but we know that she cannot do that with a shred of credibility, given that the survival of this government now depends on smashing to smithereens everything that she stands for. And now she is attempting to reverse everything that she campaigned on. It is not just impossible, it is absurd. The Prime Minister is barely in office and she is certainly not in power.
Very true.
Only 5 days ago, the Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's Questions that there would be, and I quote, absolutely no public spending reductions. But after what we have heard from the Chancellor today, every single public service is again at risk from the Conservatives. From our NHS nurses to our schools to our servicemen and women, with the country paying the price for their incompetence. The Prime Minister said that she had an energy package for 2 years. Now that's being withdrawn on the very day it is supposed to be legislated for. The Prime Minister insisted that her Conservative mini-budget would lead the country to the promised land. Instead, it has led to the highest mortgages in 15 years and emergency interventions by the Bank of England to protect pensions. And then on Friday, the unedifying spectacle of the Chancellor being dragged back from the IMF before he could do any more damage to our economy. So she has turned to a new Chancellor, who finished 8th out of 8 in the Tory leadership contest, winning just 18 votes from MPs. The Tories have run out of credibility, and now they are running out of chancellors. The latest office holder has been in the cabinet for 9 of the last 12 years, at the centre of a government responsible for low growth and weakened public services, and him responsible for helping run the NHS into the ground. He was a big part of austerity season 1, and now he says the cure is austerity season 2. And what, Mr. Speaker, was the Chancellor's flagship policy in his own short-lived leadership contest? To reduce corporation tax in a totally unfunded manner, not from 25% to 19%. The Right Honourable Gentleman called for it to be lowered to 15%, with not a single explanation of how it was to be paid for. The truth is, had he won the contest and implemented these policies, we would be in an even worse place than we are now. There is no mandate, there is no authority for any of this. The Conservatives have put a lasting premium on people's mortgages. Uncosted borrowing has sent interest rates spiralling. Millions of people's mortgage deals will be coming to an end in the next few months, leaving many families forking out £500 or more a month. People will be paying a Tory mortgage premium for years to come. So how does the Chancellor think ordinary people can possibly afford any more of this Conservative government? We've heard no answers today. Now, the Chancellor has said that growth requires confidence and stability. I agree. But where does he think the lack of confidence and the lack of stability has come from? It didn't come from the sky, Mr. Speaker. It came from the mini-budget 3 weeks ago. And what does it say about our country? That we are watching borrowing costs hour by hour. That's not the sign of a strong G7 economy. It is the exact opposite. Businesses are now saying that things are so unstable that they are pausing investment here in Britain. The former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, Charles Bean, has outlined the extraordinary damage that the Conservatives have done to our standing. In his words, we've moved from looking not too dissimilar from the US or Germany to looking more like Italy and Greece. What a mess. And where is the Office for Budget Responsibility forecast? Has this government learnt nothing? Does the Chancellor really expect the country to take everything from him at face value? Last week, the Business Secretary was busy undermining the Office for Budget Responsibility. Today, we have received another massive fiscal statement with no forecast. What has this government got to hide? They should publish the numbers so that we know the true state of the public finances after 40 days of this Prime Minister and after 12 years of Conservative governments. Now, today the Chancellor has scaled back help with energy bills for families and pensioners. It begs the question, yet again, why won't they bring in a proper windfall tax on energy producers to help foot the bill for consumers? And when will the current Chancellor publish in full the government's estimates of windfall profits of the energy giants over the next 2 years? Now, no one was talking about spending cuts until the Tories crashed the economy with their mini-budget. So I asked the Chancellor, why should the British people pay the economic price for the Tories' mistakes, and what spending cuts does the government plan to make? We believe that the government must honour its commitments to uprate benefits and pensions in line with inflation. Will the Chancellor make it clear today that that is what he intends to do? And what a contrast, that cuts to benefits are still on the table, but the one thing the Chancellor couldn't bring himself to reverse today was lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses. Why is this the last policy standing in this disastrous mini-budget? And let me come to credibility. Does the Chancellor accept that once credibility and trust have been destroyed, it cannot be simply regained by a series of zigzagging, chaotic U-turns? Will he and the Prime Minister apologise for the costs and anxieties laid on families? Can he admit once and for all that the market turmoil we are in was directly caused by the disastrous decisions of his predecessor and of the Prime Minister? Can he guarantee that the Bank of England won't have to intervene again to save the government? And what guarantee can he give to people about their pensions, about their mortgages and their household bills? The Chancellor said today that everything is now on the table. But is that really the case? We know that abolishing the non-dom tax status will raise £3 billion a year, yet there was no mention of that today. How can it be right that some of the richest individuals in society are allowed to buy their way out of paying tax that should be paid here in Britain? This would not be an eye-wateringly difficult decision, Mr. Speaker, so why doesn't the government just do it? There is lasting damage, which these policy U-turns won't change. They've set fire to everything. Now they insist it is all fine. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, an arsonist is still an arsonist, even if he runs back into a burning building with a bucket of water. Because they can't be trusted. The Tories are clinging on for themselves regardless of the cost to the country. Trickle-down economics will always fail. What drives forward our economy are the talents and efforts of millions of working people and thousands of ordinary businesses. The government's economic credibility has been destroyed. They have harmed our economic institutions. People are paying higher mortgages. The same set of people doing U-turns isn't going to fix it. The only way to change this is a real change in government.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her questions, and I'm sorry that, given the speed at which things moved at the weekend, I haven't had time to sit down with her one-to-one as would normally be the practice before parliamentary exchanges. Now, I understand the role opposition parties play. I've stood at that dispatch box myself. But behind the rhetoric, and I was listening very carefully, I don't think she disagreed with a single one of the decisions that I announced to Parliament. And that is important for the country and markets to know. And I think there is also agreement on the process of policy making. I support the independence of the Bank of England, introduced by Gordon Brown, and I know she supports the independence of the OBR set up by George Osborne. The whole government supports the independence of those two important institutions. Now, I fully accept, and I don't think I could have been more clear, that we have had to change some decisions made in the last few weeks. But what I reject wholeheartedly is her broader narrative about Conservative economic management. Let me remind her that the UK's unemployment rate is the lowest since 1974. That's below France, France, Italy, Canada, Belgium, Sweden, Spain and the Netherlands, and massively lower than 2010. Let me remind her that since 2010, our growth rate has been the third highest in the G7. She may not want to hear this, but these are the economic facts. Our growth rate since this party came into power has been higher than Germany, France, Italy and Japan, and faster than any G7 country this year. Looking to the future, we have the largest technology sector in Europe, more foreign direct investment than anywhere in Europe bar one country. That is a legacy to be proud of. Now, I was listening carefully for some questions about the measures that I announced, but she didn't ask any, and I think she agreed with them. But I will pick her up on one point. She talked about the NHS. Let me tell her, maybe they don't want to listen about the NHS. She talked about the NHS. Because of the global financial crisis which happened on her party's watch, the NHS went through one of its most difficult periods ever, and this party protected the NHS budget. Then in 2017, we were able to give it its biggest single increase in funding because of the difficult decisions that we took and that party opposed. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, we inherited a financial crisis, we dealt with a global pandemic, we've led the world in support of Ukraine, possible because of difficult decisions taken over the last 12 years, each and every one opposed by the party opposite. So if she is preaching today the need for fiscal credibility, which I warmly welcome, can I just tell her this? The true test will be in 2 weeks' time to see whether she supports public spending restraint. I've shown Conservatives can raise taxes. Will she show Labour are willing to restrain spending?